Okay, hola everyone, it's Professor Cañedo here. This is going to be the first of eight module preview videos of all the weekly topics in the class. Yes, it is a bit chilly out here as I'm recording. It certainly feels more like Detroit than Temecula. But anyway, each of these videos will serve as both a preview of the readings, PowerPoint programs, films, etc., and also serve as a suggested guide in how to best approach the readings. In other words, if you need assistance on the order of readings you should follow, then this is the path that I would suggest. So let's get started with the first week's topics. First of all, the ideal first step is to read the first three chapters from the Crucible of Struggle book. These are not required chapters, but if you'd like a quick preview of Chicano history leading up to where we are at the starting point in the class, you can't go wrong there. Zaragoza Vargas does a fine job of encapsulating early Chicano history here. And if you could expand on these chapters and maybe turn them into 10 chapters, it would certainly be a great book for Mexican American Studies 141. But if you already took the 141 class or just wish to get going with required readings, then let's proceed. Every week you should always begin with the Crucible of Struggle readings. I think Vargas gives an excellent historical overview of the periods we're covering, and it gives us a solid foundation from which to add the other readings. Thus, let's start with chapter 4 as he talks about the issues facing Chicanos during the mid-19th century, particularly the California is one major topic that he stresses in the chapter, particularly the legacy of the Gold Rush. So after the Crucible of Struggle readings, move on to the Gold Rush film. This excellent PBS documentary first aired around 2006, and it features noted scholars and authors like James Rawls, Isabel Allende, and the late J.S. Holliday, one of the foremost scholars on the Gold Rush. Coverage includes the impact on Latinos and Chinese. And on that note, after you watch the film, take a look at the PowerPoint program on the Chinese. What happened to them was indicative of not just the rampant racism and prejudice on peoples of color, but it foreshadowed many of the immigration issues that are still evident today. Now, after that, let's turn our attention to the impact of the Gold Rush on Latinos with the articles by James Rawls and Walton Bean and by Douglas Monroy. Rawls and Bean talk about the early political problems facing California as it moved quickly towards statehood in 1850. There was hardly any time to establish any solid political foundations. State politics seemed to be governed by wacky characters like Bennett Riley, David Broderick, and William Gwynn. On the other hand, prominent Californios, the Mexican Californians who trace their roots back to the Spanish era, struggled to find a political voice as their social order was being turned upside down. Things only became more chaotic once the Civil War began in 1861. Monroy picks up on that theme of the disruption of the social order by focusing on the clash of both culture and land tenure system in his article. He elaborates on some of the topics discussed in the film, such as the experience of California Antonio Coronel, as well as the infamous Land Act of 1851. The tragedy of the land law underscores the fact that the United States was simply unwilling or unable to reconcile its legal traditions with the events happening on the ground. And these are things that are analyzed further in the Beyond 1848 readings. So, to conclude the readings for the week, read the articles, the selections from pages 27 to 71 in Beyond 1848. Among the readings include the text of the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, which ostensibly was to help secure the rights of the new U.S. citizens previously living in Mexican territory. But as both John Chavez and Richard Guizos del Castillo observe, this didn't necessarily turn out to be the case. In his selection, The Lost Land, Chavez not only covers what happens to Chicanos in California, echoing on the themes in the previous readings, but he also showcases the struggles in Texas and New Mexico. He suggests that in New Mexico, there was some unique factors that allowed for some Chicanos to assume more of an assimilationist stance in dealing with a changing social order. Yet, as Guizos del Castillo argues in his selection, Chicano political rights were often at the mercy of the whims of the U.S. Supreme Court, often reflecting the political and economic realities of the country. Guizos lists many cases in his article, so you should definitely have an idea what these cases are all about and how the American political climate often affected the court's interpretation of the treaty in making these decisions. Finally, this concludes this week's module preview video. I certainly hope that you find these preview videos useful as you navigate through all the readings in the class. Now let's get going with the Crucible of Struggle readings to get things started. And once you're done with the readings, saddle up your pony and click the next button. and let's watch a movie on the gold rush. There's gold in them there hills.